Today we're going to continue analyzing our characters using that information to help us determine the theme of a passage. Today we're going to read a story called Salt in His Shoes. For this story, we are going to compare and contrast the character, the setting, and the plot to help us determine the theme. So in Book 1, we're going to call Book 1 as Giraffes Can't Dance. And I can't type. Mrs. Debo can't type. Giraffes Can't Dance. And then book number 2 will be Salt in His Shoes. So I'm going to read this story, and as we're reading, we're going to pause and we're going to think about how is the setting different? How is the plot different? How is the theme different, the moral or the message of the story? And how are our characters different, or how are they alike? Okay, so remember, in a Venn diagram, or even if it's not circular shaped, we have the character here, Giraffes Can't Dance. The story will be here in the blue. What they have in common will be in purple, and what Salt in His Shoes has that is different, contrasting to Giraffes Can't Dance, will be here in red. Okay, so let's take a peek. Let's get started here. Salt in His Shoes by Dolores Jordan with Rosalind M. Jordan, illustrated by Kadir Nelson. Michael loved to play basketball. Every Saturday, he followed his older brothers, Larry and Ronnie, to the park, hoping that they would let him play. And if one of the guys who usually played with them didn't show, they always did. I think I read that wrong. Let's try that again. Michael loved to play basketball. Every Saturday, he followed his older brothers, Larry and Ronnie, to the park, hoping that they would let him play. And if one of the guys who usually played with him didn't show, they always did, meaning they always let him play if somebody didn't show. But there was one problem. His name was Mark, and he was the tallest boy on the court. "Hey, what's the matter, Mikey? You too short?" Mark flapped his arms in Michael's face. "Over here," shouted Larry. But when Michael threw the ball, Mark's long arms came out of nowhere and knocked the ball away. It flew into the hands of a player on Mark's team. He made the basket, and the game was over just like that. So what is Michael's problem? What's Michael's problem? He's too short? Mark's arms are too long? I think there's probably a deeper problem here. Let's keep reading and see if we can figure it out. "I'm really sorry, guys. If I were taller, that wouldn't have happened." All the way home, Michael apologized, even though no one was mad at him. His oldest brother, Ronnie, tried to cheer him up. "Look, little brother, you played a good game today. Don't worry, we'll win the next time." When they got home, Michael went into the kitchen where Mama was cooking dinner. He was still disappointed, and she could tell. "You guys lost again today, huh?" He sat quietly for a minute, then said, "Mama, how can I grow taller?" So let's think about this. Let's pause for a moment here and compare our stories. What is the setting of our story we're reading right now? Basketball court? What was the setting of Giraffes Can't Dance? A jungle dance? Okay. Is there anything the same about our settings here? I have to think really deeply. How are these two settings similar? Any ideas? I would say they are both a performance space. Performance space. Places where somebody can perform, right? Places where somebody performs. So you perform on a dance floor and you also perform on the basketball court. Okay, let's think about what the problem was in yesterday's story. Gerald felt left out and like a bad dancer. He felt bad about himself. Okay. What's Michael's problem in this story? How does Michael feel? Does he feel left out? No. He gets to play basketball with his brothers. That's part of the story, a main part of the story. Now, over here, Gerald feels left out and like a bad dancer. Does Michael also feel bad about himself? Not about themselves, but for different reasons, right? They're feeling hard. They're very hard on themselves. Gerald's hard on himself for not being a great dancer right off the bat or being just like everybody else. And Michael's also down on himself because he's not just like everybody else on the team. He's not tall, okay? So they have similar problems, but very different. But isn't, so let's add that part here about being not as tall as the others. So let's review what we have so far. Book 1, Giraffes Can't Dance. The setting is at the Jungle Dance. The setting of our second story, Salt in His Shoes, is at the basketball court. Something they have in common is they are both at performance spaces, places where you perform. In Giraffes Can't Dance, Gerald felt left out and he felt like a bad dancer. He just generally felt bad about himself. I'm going to take this piece out because I added that here. Both characters feel bad about themselves. They are hard on themselves and the things they aren't good at. Let's just say they're hard on themselves. Okay. Over here we have Michael gets to play basketball with his friends, so he doesn't feel left out. He just feels kind of like an outsider though too, I would say, because he doesn't feel good enough to play on the team. And would you say that Gerald also didn't feel good enough to dance with the other jungle animals? Okay, so two completely different stories, one about animals and dancing, which is kind of drastically fictional. And then we have one about a boy who wants to be as tall as the other players so he can be really good at the game, which is a little bit more realistic. So two very different stories, but they have a lot in common. Let's keep reading. Don't forget we also have our character slide here that we can compare the characters. Okay, let's keep reading. Now Mama knew the answer to a lot of questions, but this was a tough one. She thought for a moment as she sprinkled salt and pepper on the chicken she was making for dinner. Then she smiled, looked at Michael, and said, "Salt. How's salt going to make him taller?" "Salt," Michael looked at his mama. "Salt in your shoes. We'll put salt in your shoes and say a prayer every night. Before you know it, you'll be taller," she replied. "Salt in my shoes," Michael said quietly to himself. Surely Mama was teasing. He sat staring out of the window, trying to figure out how salt was going to help him grow. He noticed the rose bushes outside in Mama's garden. They had grown high along the fence, and roses of all colors were blooming on the vines. He thought to himself, "I remember when Mama first planted those bushes." Michael's face lit up. If Mama knows how to make those rose bushes grow taller, then maybe she's right. Maybe salt in my shoes really will help me grow. Notice how the writing here, trying to get this over here for you, is slanted where we hear his thoughts and not actually what he's really saying. Okay? Growing more excited, Michael twirled around and started asking lots of questions. "Mama, how long will it take? And how tall do you think I'll get?" Smiling, Mama sat down next to him and explained, "In order for this to work, the most important things you have to do are be patient and listen to what I tell you and say your prayers every night." Listening carefully, Michael shook his head. "Okay, Mama, I'll be patient. But what does saying my prayers have to do with it?" Did Gerald have to have patience too? He kind of had to find his own way. Later during dinner, Mama noticed that Michael was barely eating anything. He was already daydreaming about being taller. "Michael, first things first, you won't grow if you don't eat, especially your vegetables," Mama said. "But I'm not really hungry," he said. Raising her eyebrows, Mama gave him a stern look. Slowly, Michael picked up his fork and began to eat. Minutes later, his plate was clean, and he was asking for more. That evening at bedtime, Michael set his favorite game shoes on the floor next to the growth chart hanging on the wall. How many of you have a growth chart at home? Yeah. Then he put on his pajamas, said his prayers, and jumped into bed. Did he really jump? No. When Mama came in, Michael was fast asleep. By the look on his face, she could tell he was already playing basketball in his dreams. Standing by his bed, Mama sprinkled salt in his shoes. Then she prayed over him quietly, as she did all of her children. After that night, Michael wore his favorite game shoes everywhere he went, even to church, and he stopped going to the park with his brothers on Saturdays. Instead, he stayed home and practiced. He wanted to grow a few more inches before he went back to the park. Is this similar or different to Gerald? Gerald didn't practice for weeks, but did he take some time off from the dancing to practice? Yeah, Michael's doing that practice on purpose. Gerald came across it quite by accident. That feeling just came over him, right? With the wind and the trees. And so a little bit different, but similar. After 2 months of practicing and waiting patiently, Michael stood next to the growth chart on his wall. Nothing. He hadn't grown an inch. He was disappointed, but he did not stop believing. I've just got to give it time like Mama said, Michael thought to himself. And that's what he did. 2 more months of practicing went by, and still nothing. 4 months! No playing basketball with his buddies and his brothers. Now Michael was becoming a little sad. Not only had he not grown 1 inch, but he also missed playing basketball with Larry and Ronnie. About the only thing he didn't miss was being picked on by Mark. Who was the person that did the picking in the jungle dance? Do you remember who picked on him first? The lion, right? So Mark's kind of like the lion in this story. There's always the villain of the story. When the next Saturday came, his brothers tried to get Michael to go with them to the park, but he wouldn't budge. Mama had begun to worry. When she saw Michael sitting alone on the steps, she said to Daddy, "Maybe you should go out and talk to him." So Daddy went out and sat with Michael. "What's wrong, son? You haven't gone to the park with your brothers for a while now. Are you okay?" Michael didn't say anything at first. Then he looked at Daddy and said, "I thought I would be at least a few inches taller by now. I did everything Mama told me to do, but nothing's happened." "Michael, why do you want to be taller?" Daddy asked. "If I were taller, I'd be a great player, and I could help our team win," Michael answered. So we're getting to the root of the problem here. He doesn't want to be the one that causes his team to lose, right? He wants to be good at this, not necessarily taller, just help his team win. "But you are a great player, son, and you already have everything it takes to be a winner, right in here." Daddy tapped Michael on his chest. "Being taller may help you play a little better, but not as much as practice, determination, and giving your best will. Those are the things that make you a real winner." Did Gerald have determination? I would say maybe. He had to in the end. He had to keep trying. "Where are you going?" Daddy yelled after him. "I've got a game today, and I'm late," Michael yelled back. Any predictions of how this is going to go? Do you think Michael will get to play? When Michael reached the park, the game had started. He sat on the bench, hoping he would get a chance to play, and he did. The game was almost over, and the score was tied when John, one of the guys on Michael's team, fell and hurt himself. Here was Michael's chance to prove himself. Michael joined his team in the huddle as they gathered on the sideline for a timeout. "Okay, the game is tied. All we need is 1 point. Who wants to take the shot?" Ronnie asked. He looked in Michael's direction. Feeling more confident than ever, Michael said, "I'll do it." I'm worried for him. There he is. There's Mark. There's the lion. When the whistle blew and the game began again, Mark began to pick on Michael as usual. "Still trying to play with the big boys, huh?" Mark taunted. But Michael paid him no attention. Taller or not, he had been practicing, and today he was determined to win. Can you see the confidence in Michael's face right there? Larry threw the ball inbounds to Michael. Michael caught it, bounced it for a moment, then took off running. Can he get past Mark? As he approached Mark, Michael shifted to his right. Mark followed, but while he was still shifting, Michael spun to his left. He stepped behind Mark and shot. The ball arced far above his opponent's heads and fell silently through the hoop. 2 points. The game was over. Michael's team had won. It was just as Michael had dreamed. When he realized what he'd done, Michael took off running and didn't stop till he reached home. Bursting through the door, he shouted, "I did it, Daddy! I did it! I shot right over the tall guy's head, and we won the game!" Sounds a lot like Gerald, doesn't it? Luckily, I have the book right here. When Gerald said, "I am dancing! Yes, I'm dancing! I am dancing!" Gerald cried. So they're both feeling this proud moment. Running in behind him, Ronnie and Larry joined the celebration. "That's right, little brother, you did it. You won the game for us." Michael remembered the look that Ronnie gave him during the last time out of the game and said, "No, we won the game, but I was the star." They all laughed. After that day, Mama stopped putting salt in Michael's shoes, but Michael did not stop being patient and working hard. So that must be what made Michael grow to be a 6'6" tall basketball superstar. And if you didn't already figure it out, this book is about Michael Jordan. For you basketball fans. All right, so let's take a look and see how our characters are alike and how they are different. And then we'll come back to our theme. I forgot to add characters up here. Okay, so let's see. Gerald is a bad dancer. At first, right? Michael wants to be better at basketball. Could we say that Gerald wants to be a better dancer? Okay. What are some other things we know about them? I would say they're both determined, right? They both don't give up easily. That's kind of what determined means, right? Okay, what other traits would you use to describe them? Don't be afraid to use your trait chart that I gave you. Okay. What are some other things we can think about? Something that's different is Michael wants to help others. That's not something I think Gerald was really worried about other than looking like he knew what he was doing in front of others, okay? I'm going to give you some time to think about those things as well. Let me make this box a little bit bigger here. Okay, coming back up here, I think we have a lot of it covered here with our plot. So they had similar problems in that they were feeling bad about themselves and they were really hard on themselves. So what could you say they have in common? Would they have a common theme, or do you think their themes are much different? I would say Michael has perseverance. Perseverance, right? He doesn't give up easily. And we can't use the name of the character in our theme. Remember, Mrs. Devo? It is good to have perseverance. In Giraffes Can't Dance, everyone is different and unique, and that's okay, right? And that's okay. What do they have in common? I would say accepting your own differences. Okay, would you agree? they both have to accept that even though they're not going to be, Michael's not going to be tall, unlike Gerald, who is very tall, and unlike the ones that can do the tango and the cha-cha, Gerald can't do that. He has to dance in a different way. So Gerald has to dance in a different way. Michael has to come up with other tricks since he's shorter. So they both have to accept their weaknesses and find ways to make their, turn their weaknesses into positives, right? And turn their negatives into positives. Great. So what I would like you to do today is work through this on your own here. See if there's anything else you can add. And if you can, great, add that and turn this in. I'd like you to try to add at least one other idea to this, okay? And once you do that, you are all finished for today. If you have any questions, please let me know.